This is the Mind Body Detox Podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom for how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back, everyone, to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Mind Body Medium, Karen Lovehart, and we are continuing our Energy Mastery series today. We only have one more episode after this in the series. So just to recap, if you have not listened to those episodes, I highly encourage you to go back. We started with the heart chakra. We started with that one because that is the center of our beingness. And we went to our solar plexus next. It's where our action and our orientation to doing is. We move to our authentic expression and our integrity, our truth, our throat chakra next. We talked about the sacral center. That is where we connect, we relate to our creativity and how we connect to other in our lives. Last week, we talked about the third eye chakra, and that is relating to our clarity, our vision, balancing intellect and intuition. So as we are journeying through the chakra system, today we're going to discuss the root chakra. So we'll discuss how that connects to our sense of safety and physical security in the world, how that relates to the physical body, and my perceptions on how this is really an important chakra for us, especially in this day and age, to really pay attention to and understand how we can create balance so that we can support, again, the mind-body connection, but then our overall health and wellness. So in previous episodes, I talked about how all of the chakras are associated with nerve bundles or nerve plexus along the spinal column. The root chakra is associated with the pelvic plexus. So this is at the base of the spine. So think about when you're holding back urine and you're doing like a Kegel exercise, that's where you're activating this area physiologically. And when we're talking about this energy body, what is very interesting about this one is associated with survival. When we don't feel safe, the root chakra is affected. It affects our cortisol levels, our fight, flight, fawn, freeze response. So this is where we as animals get activated as far as our physical survival goes. And in extreme circumstances, this is where we can lose bowel or bladder control. So thinking about when there is an extreme experience of trauma to the body, the nervous system can actually lose control. And though that muscle, that pelvic floor muscle, is associated with this particular area losing that sense of control in the nervous system, losing bladder control. And so I find it very interesting that when we have this sense of not feeling safe in an extreme circumstance, this is what is affected in the physical body. So I want you to keep that in mind as we're talking about the mind-body connection. Now, you may not have had an experience or are experiencing on a daily basis something that is creating you to lose bladder control. That is something that's an extreme stress response. But the little day-to-day stress responses that we have that are activated in our bodies from us being animals and beings of physical nature that need to survive, this is the energy center that is completely supportive of activating, alerting you, and helping you to find that sense of survival. Now, these are more of our primal instincts. So food, shelter, water. Procreation is the sacral center, because if we don't have this sense of safety and security of having our shelter, our food, and we're not being chased by an animal or attacked, we're not going to have that activity sexually and have that desire. So that is the sacral center we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But this one specifically is for that survival. And that includes connection to the physical elements and the world. This center, I feel, is very much imbalanced for many of us as humans unless we're really supported and connected in with nature and our physical bodies. The root chakra is a representation of your connection and feelings of sense of safety in the physical world and your body. So think about it. How often are you paying attention to your body? Most of us get lost in our heads. Like I said in the last episode, we have more activity up and around above the body versus in, down, and grounded in, anchored into this physical nervous system that's sensing what's going on in the physical form. even just the weight of our body on the chair or on our feet, paying attention to our hands, our physical being as we're moving throughout time and space. When we're in that state of consciousness, grounded, anchored, here in the present body, not lost in our thoughts. Our thoughts can be active, we can be there, but we're fully anchored in the body. This is where we find balance, especially if you're feeling safety. This is where we see a really great awareness of your third dimensional surroundings, what's going on around you. When we're not in activated stress response, fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, this is where our nervous system is able to encode information, remember information, and recall information more quickly and efficiently. This is why when you feel rushed or you have to get going quickly and your nervous system response is up a little bit, just a little bit, this is where your brain may not be able to function correctly and you're not going to be able to remember where things are in the third dimensional world, or even memory recall at all. But this is where, like an example, when you're trying to leave your house and you have to go quickly and then you can't find your car keys. If in those circumstances, you would take a pause, take a breath, calm your nervous system down so that your physical body is feeling safe, you can slow your mind down, and you can get grounded in your third dimensional surroundings, chances are you're going to recall where those car keys were left. You're going to pay more attention to what's going on around you and in your body than what's going on in your head, your to-do list, what you're supposed to do 5 minutes from now. So a slow and steady pace is really healthy for this energy center. Building, it's full of energy and life force, but not frenetic energy. The energy is strong, resilient. This strong sense of security in the body and in third dimensional space also includes money as well. We talked about that being somewhat associated with the sacral center because that's our exchange with other. But because money is equivalent to a lot of our survival in this culture, that is associated with this center. So think about it. If we're having money insecurities in our physical environment, our living circumstances, food or shelter, or the connection to people like family, our human tribe, or others that we feel a sense of belonging, this also will activate our stress response and our animal survival instincts. If we don't have a group or a tribe or a people that we feel that have got our back, they're there to support us, even if it's the human family, right? We will not necessarily feel safe in our physical bodies. I believe that this energy center has been the foundation, of course, of why we're still here today, why we have so much resilience because of the fight, flight, fawn, freeze response. It helps us to enact or run or freeze or fawn, people please, to get people to like us so we're not kicked out of the tribe. All these responses are for our survival evolutionarily. And when we're aware of our physical bodies, we're aware of what's going on in the planet around us. We're aware that it's time to hibernate. We're aware when it's time to wake up, when it's time to go to sleep. If we're centered in this space, we have this really beautiful relationship with time because we have an understanding of how we can utilize it to build. We can utilize this awareness of how the third dimensional world works. We can use this to understand how to build systems, build structures, build rules, regulations. So the reason I think that this energy center is the most out of balance for us as humans, because we've lost connection with our physical bodies. Very few of us are paying attention to what's going on there. We've lost connection to nature. We don't necessarily get out in nature and connect with it. Even electromagnetically, walking barefoot on the earth is very grounding to the nervous system. There is a lot of really cool research behind this. And even more recently, people purchasing grounding types of devices, grounding shoes, because there is something that happens to the physical body when we are against the earth. Even grounding sheets you can put on your bed. So being grounded, the word grounded meaning being associated with the physical dimension, feeling and knowing what's going on around you, being aware of your body, being here and now, not stuck in your head. That is associated with this energy center. And I think that this is the one that's more activated and shoots us up out of the body or into our head, when we're in survival and we don't have action. If we are just working with the parts of ourselves that are fight, flight, fawn, freeze, those are automatic responses. They're automatic, they're primal. And this is the energy center that if we don't have conscious awareness, these higher chakras we talked about, like the third eye, the brow chakra, the crown we'll talk about next week, the heart center, being compassionate of ourselves, giving and receiving to others. When we don't have those activated and online, and we're just in primal survival mode, this is where we see self-centered behaviors of needing to be preserving the self for survival. And this makes sense why, if we don't feel safe, we're activated in our stress response, fight, flight, fawn, freeze, and maybe we don't feel safe in a group, or we can overcompensate for safety in group. This is where we see all different types of distortions in how we try to create safety for ourselves. It could be taking, could be stealing, it could be climbing the corporate ladder in ways that are trying to create more financial security for the self in a way that might be pushing down others along the way. This use of power in physical security situations, abuse, violence, things that are just the acts of nature that we as human animals do when we are feeling scared. It all comes down to us feeling scared. Whether when we get scared, we get anxious, we get mean or angry, we become people pleasers because we want to make sure that everyone's okay, or we just freeze and we disassociate or we avoid situations, right? So any of those stress responses, we have to know that this energy center is our animal self that's still here. And when we're not aware of it, we don't have the ability then to override from more of a conscious way to interact with our world. If we're not aware of it, we're not paying attention to our physical bodies, and thus we're not taking care of it. We're not paying attention to the earth, and thus we're not taking care of her. We're not paying attention to our fellow human beings. We're not taking care of them. We may not be taking care of the physical structures in our day-to-day. Maybe it's hard for us. We're scattered because we're so activated in our stress response that we may not have a set, healthy routine. When this energy center is shut down, there is a lot of energy moving up and out of the body, trying to create more safety up to trust, to spirit, to God, which we'll talk about next week, or this sense of trying to use the brain to problem solve, to find the safety psychologically in the headspace versus doing action-oriented steps, like maybe creating routine, maybe creating safety around your home. This could be structures that relate to creating more safety financially, things that you do or you don't do, and then also maybe making action steps to connect in with others, especially if you don't feel safe in a group. Now, also keep in mind that there hasn't been a time on the planet that there is right now that we're experiencing that we have so much interaction based on the internet and the ability to connect with people from other sides of the world that are from different tribes. So if you are just thinking about any other animal species on the planet, most of them have their little groups, their little cohorts, their flocks, and some of them are more territorial than others. But there still is, and again, some animals don't travel in groups. We are group mammals. We thrive in groups. So thinking about the old part of our brain that if we don't know what the other group is from the next town over, from the next culture over, from the next whatever, they have a different belief system or background or way of living, that activates a part of our stress response that doesn't necessarily feel safe. If we've overridden that through this awareness of discomfort and things that are new that might seem scary, and we've had enough experience with trying new things that might be scary and that are uncomfortable and that are maybe outside of our culture, that we are just here from a curious perspective of learning and acceptance, we have come from a place of being safe in our physical bodies and knowing through the experiences that we've had that it might be uncomfortable, but I am still safe. So we're in this way, we're actually evolving that animalistic center. We still need to make sure that we're safe and scan the environment sometimes when we meet a person that may not be safe for us, physical violence. There could be something happening physically in the space, whether it's weather related or there is particular animals in that region outside that could be dangerous to you, like snakes or tigers or predators, bears, things like that. Our bodies will continue to alert us of these things to keep us alive. But we have to know the difference between our stress response and our primal responses, what our body's asking for, and what is just an old response that says, oh, my body's just feeling unsafe right now because I'm near a ledge, that response of like, oh, it's dangerous, like too close, I might die. Those are really good activations of this energy center. And you might even be able to feel it. Thinking about a time that you were really, really scared, that there is almost, the more aware you become of it, of course, we can get feelings in our nervous system in the stomach area, the solar plexus, of maybe not feeling in control. But when it comes to this center, when the feelings are at the base of the spine, that pelvic floor region, when we feel this sense of not safe, we draw in, right? We pull out. That is where you're going to see that this might be an old animal primal response being activated, such as, ooh, that doesn't feel safe, I'm near a ledge. Ooh, that person over there, there's a lot of fighting going on. There's something that's not safe to go in there. I don't want to be engaged. Now, the other extreme of this energy center being on is when we have felt out of control and not safe. And instead, we overexert our power, and there's a lot more energy flowing to the pelvic floor region so that we can get issues physiologically there, pelvic floor tightness. We can have issues just physiologically because all the nerves that then go down into the legs and feet. The root chakra is also associated with our adrenal glands. So the stress response, fight, flight, fawn, freeze, right? It's cortisol levels associated there. And then our physical structure, the physical body, the musculoskeletal system, and the blood. So this is the energy of the body, the physical orientation of the body. But think about it. If you experience so much in your life where you don't feel safe, and you're trying to overexert a sense of safety on your surroundings, what we see often is hoarding physical resources like money, being hyper aware of structures, rules, and regulations, and maybe knowing them to the T, being very third dimensionally oriented, so you can find loopholes or find things that you can utilize these structures for your personal gain, or it really comes down to personal sense of safety. It's a really deep sense of not feeling safe. And I think that there's a lot of conversation in the world at this time of just say inequality when it comes to wealth distribution. And so I would encourage people always to explore your own energy centers, explore the understanding of your psychology, the mind-body connection through these episodes and through further training to help you understand that every single person on this planet has some sort of expression in their energy of what might be imbalanced. And that is a snapshot of their consciousness. And when we get stuck or rigid in an imbalance or distortions in our energy field, we're going to see these different types of behaviors. And we talked about some of them in each of these different episodes. The behaviors you might see in this overexertion of the root chakra is hoarding wealth, not equal distribution of wealth, using power structures to create rules and regulations to protect you or your individual people in your family that can make sure that your things, your resources, your money is not taken away from you. An overexpression of this, again, someone who's deeply not feeling safe, especially think about the things that make people not feel safe. It's not having physical things, their physical survival, and people and tribe, that type of thing. So wanting to have control over the climate and things, natural disasters. So an individual who deeply, deeply doesn't feel necessarily safe would want to find some way to control that. And I think it's important because there is a lot of interesting conversations around weather and climate change and what can we control, what can't we control when it comes to Mother Earth. So that sense of control because of our primal instincts of we may not survive because there could be an earthquake or a tornado or whatever. Of course, someone who's experienced that, or maybe has had a lineage of ancestors who've experienced that has been passed down, that trauma to them, we could see people who get very interested in looking at how we can work with the weather. Now, there's a difference between studying the weather and being a meteorologist and studying the changes in climate and also trying to control it because of a deep sense of fear. And then there's a space of trying to control it from a potential curiosity of maybe we can, maybe it's not harmful, maybe maybe it's possible. I don't know, because I'm not an expert in that area, but just think about that. This sense of I need to control my physical safety. I need to control the wealth in the world. I need to control the people in the world, or put them in certain groups, or isolate them from these people or that person, because if not, then I lose a sense of control with my safety. And it to me, these individuals who are very excess in this particular arena, they usually don't have a spiritual connection. They usually don't have their heart center turned on, the sense of compassion. It's really a lot of self-preservation, older brain of me first, my family, my wealth, what's safe for me, accumulation of power and control in systems. And then there's sometimes the use of discipline and specific wording, misuse of the voice or the throat chakra, misuse of the solar plexus to get things organized and influence people to create this sense of safety. But I encourage you to look at it from this perspective of compassion, back to the heart center. We're only aware of ourselves to the degree that we can be conscious in that moment or that part in our lives. And there's so many of us that have no awareness. And because of all of us on the planet not feeling safe right now, like it could be small things in your life that a car cut you off in traffic that makes you not feel safe for a split second. And it activates your fight, flight, fawn, freeze response. We get angry, we get anxious, whatever it is. It's this beautiful mechanism that's kept us alive. But this energy center, these characteristics continue to be operating in autopilot, default mode, without us being able to consciously override them and become aware of other ways we can find security, safety, connection to our bodies, and most importantly, to understand that when we're connected to our bodies and grounded and rooted in this physical plane, then we start to see things around us. Let's just talk about little things. When you start to heal maybe trauma patterns or disassociation patterns, or get more grounded, have this ability to see things in your environment you've never seen before, this will start to show up like little things like, oh, I'm going to start cleaning my house a little differently, or decorating differently, or your third dimensional spaces start to change. You maybe create more structure or organization, or get rid of things. You don't hoard things as much. Maybe you have a lot of stuff that you had that creates a sense of psychological safety, or maybe there was a wound that you had held on to something because you had loss in your life. And it can also show up when we have this excess of the energy trying to disperse itself or discharge when we don't feel safe. What type of behaviors show up that we try to feel safe? Maybe we save a lot of extra money. Maybe we don't spend. Maybe we try to get closer to people and maybe try to people please or fawn with them so we feel a sense of security from this tribe. So the best part of this energy center, the benefit of this, when you're aware of it, is that you can utilize the awareness of creating safety and security and needing to have that it's okay, that it's part of what you need to help all the other centers activate and be in more of a sense of balance. Because again, if it's turned off, shut down, we're not going to be connected to our bodies. If it's turned up too much, we're going to have this sense of trying to hyper control the physical world. And this is where we see distortions of like people trying to live forever. They don't want to die. Again, other things like hoarding properties and wealth, or separating people, maybe creating this sense of distance from fellow humanity and seeing this tribe versus this tribe, this group of people, this society versus this. It's this black and white type of war consciousness thinking that we'll move into because we're trying to create a sense of protection from the other. So when it comes to this interpersonal dynamic stuff, that's more sacral center. But when it comes to the root center, this is more us versus a large group of people that we can't necessarily relate to on an individual level. This is where we see coming together in a human space, that is the wonderful aspect of healing humanity. If we can have this awareness that we are all human family, and we can recognize that we are here to help support each other and create safety together with all the other benefits and blessings we have as innovative thinking, ideas, structures that we could create or recreate. If we can come together from that place, that solidifies a deeper sense of connecting and feeling safe. And in this day and age, when there is a large amount of polarization, rhetoric, media, belief systems, perspectives that create this polarization and separation from each other, it does create a sense in our nervous systems, we're not safe, they over there. And not that there aren't legitimate threats to different perspectives on the planet that are creating this hoarding, or I mean, even us too, like this hoarding, this not connecting to each other. We all have work to do. There's no one tribe doing it better than the other, one culture doing it better than the other. And I think that it's important for us to recognize that if we come together from awareness of our stress response, that we just get heightened sometimes, and we can see each other from a space of humanity with compassion, that heart center is the key to helping balance the root center. Now, what's really interesting about this is when we look at color theory, red is the root chakra color and green is more the heart chakra color. When we look at balancing complementary colors from color theory, you do red and green together, right? This is why they put strawberries in green pint containers. They makes the strawberries look brighter red. So when we have complementary colors, we can help balance the excess. So if we have too much red going on, too much excessive need to hoard and to control and to create distance between people, whatever it is, if we have this sense of heart-centeredness, compassion, love, that balances and calms the nervous system enough, opens up our hearts and our minds so we can have this connection to the human self, that we aren't just animals, that yes, we're here to survive, but we can find ways to do it that create safety for all of us. And it's interesting that those are complementary colors. Another thing that comes up with people who are too heart-centered, too giving, there's not enough red. There's too much of that green heart-centered nature. And I see this in many empaths energy fields, right? They're not necessarily feeling really strong in their physical form and body. They don't have the strong ability to have boundaries and structures and routines, not necessarily hoarding or trying to control or grasp them rigidly, but they don't have this ability to be strong in their presence with that root chakra being turned on and feeling really safe. It's because the people pleaser didn't feel safe, right? The empath didn't feel safe. So that's why it's extending its love to try to create safety through love and compassion and helping everyone be okay. And so that sense of, on some level, there being this wound initially somewhere that I don't feel safe in the root center physically being here. I have to create safety through people pleasing. It doesn't create this strong sense of showing up in a room or a space with a rooted sense of presence, because the person is feeling safe in their body. They're calm in their nervous system. They're aware of their third dimensional surroundings. And they know how to have structure or boundaries or create this space that when they walk in, they're not threatened. They can still be compassionate and kind, but they have this space, this presence that they can carry. And what happens in an individual like that, they have a stronger immune system. So the connection to the root chakra from a mind-body perspective, if it's overactive and or it's underactive or overactive, we can see imbalances in the immune system where we don't feel safe. Think about that. Our immune system is our sense of safety for our health when it comes to getting viruses or getting rid of viruses or warding them off, or parasites or any sort of external threat, right? And it's the same thing. It's a mirror then of our physical bodies feeling safe in the world. It's a mirror. And the thymus gland, which is associated with the heart chakra, is also associated with making white blood cells and our immune system. So when we have this balance of our heart and our roots, we can have this immune system health that can be more activated. People who have a lot of autoimmune conditions, like I said before, tend to be individuals that have heart chakra related imbalances. giving out too much, overextending themselves, not having a strong sense of being in the body, or the body's in pain because of different autoimmune types of conditions. So again, there's not this strong sense of energy, life force, groundedness, hardiness that comes along with the root center. So one more thing I'll discuss when it comes to the root center, this is associated with our ancestry. What's been passed down to us, what we learn from our parents, what they learn from their parents, even epigenetically, because there are things that get passed down in our lineage genetically that help us to continue to survive. So if we have ancestral healing to do, we've had people in our family that have had chronic health issues, and if there's ways that we can work with it genetically, nutritionally, lifestyle, things that we can do to not continue to perpetuate addiction, perpetuate obesity, things that we can support. And there are definitely genetic factors that are going to be passed down, and there are life circumstances that you may not be able to change these things. But there are other things such as not speaking up, not feeling safe, having a history of being in poverty, having a history of believing that you will never go to college, or you will never, no one in your family has ever graduated from college or had a master's degree. There are many, 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 many generations of people that perpetuate addictive behaviors or perpetuate abusive relationships or dynamics, isolation, and so many different types of patterns that we get, that we say we got that from our parents, or we learned that, or we find out we have a pattern that has been passed down that so many people have had. So an example for me is I live in the same home that my family has lived in for 6 generations. What a root chakra topic right there, right? The physical third dimensional space that I grew up in, that my mother grew up in, that my grandfather grew up in. This is the same space that continues the lineage of people that live here. Now, what's been passed down is the brethren community of supporting other people, eating off the land, being connected to God, being connected to my faith, being someone who is very spiritually intertwined as a medium I am, and someone who's about people, community, connection, and healing. Now, from another perspective, what also has been passed down? Every woman that has lived in this house has been widowed. And there has been a sense of a need for the woman to be the matriarch and have to step up and take care of the family of 8 children, 5 children, many responsibilities being running a farm. So the reason I give that example is I want you to think about your life. What has been passed down to you? What is your burden to carry ancestrally? Because working with the root chakra, we're not just working with third dimensional stuff. We're working from a different plane spiritually, in a sense of honoring our ancestors, what they passed down to us, what the lessons they never learned were that we're learning. So for example, my brethren family, it's something that they're not about acquiring a lot of wealth. And it's something that they would never buy jewelry or wedding rings, or they want to remain humble, to be allowed to be loved by God. It's not okay necessarily in that lineage, that belief system, to have more. And a lot of times there's a struggle financially. So those are things that, as my journey progressed, especially being a single mother and having this lineage of women who were widowed or were also single mothers, that's a lot of struggle consciousness that was passed down, not just from behaviors I watched as a child, but then just epigenetically. So those are patterns. What are the beautiful things that your ancestry has brought you? And what are the challenges? What are the things that your core beliefs, your patterns, your behaviors, and distress responses that have been passed down, that are very ingrained, at being more aware of the physical body? This is how we clear ancestral patterns. Being more aware of your third dimensional surroundings, your structures for safety, security, your routines, your financial habits, all of these things that create a sense of physical safety. Maybe it is connecting to a nice group of people, a new family, not the family that you grew up with. Maybe they're not healthy for you. So those are all things to consider when we're finding mastery in this energy center. But I would like to finish by saying that I think this energy center is the most threatened for imbalance at this time. I think that we are disconnected from our bodies, from each other, from the earth. And the more we start connecting into our body and being physically aware, what I find interesting in what happens in people's consciousness when they start to sense their bodies again, because trauma creates us to check out of it sometimes, or chronic pain creates us to not want to be in it because it hurts so much, right? But when we find balance in that over time, we start to be aware of our surroundings. When you're aware of your surroundings, you start to pay attention to Mother Nature. You start to revere things that you never looked at before. Like, look at that bird outside. You're here in the physical space. You start to take better care of your finances, maybe your home, maybe your physical body with just self-care, maybe with the way that you decorate, the way that you cook, the way you interact with people, and the way you can start to see people as humans, even if they're from a different culture, different belief system, different philosophy, because you start to feel anchored in to your physical body and you feel safe. So that is the biggest thing that I find important in this culture, especially when we have a lot of the media and news that are perpetuating feelings that trigger the unconscious animal stress response of we're not safe, we're separate, them over there, those people are hoarding all the whatever, fill in the blank. Right? That is something that we have to be aware of, that those things, even if we think about them, and when we think about them, it starts to activate that stress response. You might even be able to feel it. Pay attention to your pelvic floor. Pay attention to it starting to activate and feel unsafe or rigid or tighten up versus laxed and relaxed and open, feeling centered and safe in your physical body. So that is the end of this episode for our root chakra. And next week, we're going to talk about the crown center. So the most important one, in my opinion, when it comes to our connection to our life source and our life force and everything that drives our blueprint for who we are, our soul purpose, and connecting us into something greater. So thank you again for listening, and be well until next time, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. If you love this podcast, share it with others and leave us a review. Your reviews help us more than you know and supports us continuing to make episodes and being heard from all over the world. You can also follow the link in our show notes to submit a topic that you would like to hear on the show.